If you've ever been denied a promotion, it can be extremely frustrating because you do really well at your job and then they never tell you why they picked someone else. Or if they do, they often just say something like, keep doing what you're doing, which isn't very helpful. But what if someone would finally tell you the real reason why someone else was picked and what you can do about it? Well, as an executive, I've been part of countless panel interviews and selection committees and have rejected a lot of people for promotions. And each time I like to provide feedback to them, and every single one of them tells me the exact same thing, and I always end up giving the exact same advice. And in every case where I saw a candidate come back after implementing the advice, then they always got selected. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly why these candidates didn't get selected and what they fixed in order to get promoted. So right off the bat, what you need to understand is you don't get promoted for performance, you get promoted for potential. So it doesn't matter how good you are in your current role, it matters how good you could be in the next one. And this is an important distinction because when I see employees turn up to promotional interviews, the way they try and advertise themselves is entirely focused on what they do now, not what potential they have in the next role. But showing your potential is easier said than done because you don't have authority and decision making power of the next role. So, how are you supposed to demonstrate potential for that role that you don't even have? Well, the good news is, as I'm about to show you, showing potential only requires a simple mindset shift. So, how do you move to the next level? Well, understanding this is the key to getting promoted. And what exactly is this other than a bunch of arts and crafts that I use for my son's crafting box? Well, what I'm going to do is represent the executive perspective. And what that means is the trait you're giving to leadership and how they interpret it. For example, in your promotional interview, in your day to day, you demonstrate that you're hardworking. So, what we do is we take hard work and we flip it over and reveal what the executive perspective is on that trait. And how they see hard work is someone who is stuck in the weeds, someone who isn't ready to move up because they can't make wider decisions and they're too comfortable just doing the stuff they've always done. And so, what they don't see is potential. So, you get the idea, right? I show you a positive trait and then reveal what executives see, and then I'll show you what you should do instead to demonstrate to executives you're ready to promote. Very, very simple, right? So you can see the problem you've got. It's that all the traits you have that you're demonstrating in your work and thinking are positive and will get you promoted can actually be negative signals that don't show your potential. But the solution is also obvious because if you swap your mindset from performance mindset to strategic mindset, then we will know what traits demonstrate potential. And for example, so instead of hard work, what you should do is demonstrate outcome focused. And what this does is demonstrate to leaders that you have value to add, that you're using your hard work to drive value in the business, right? So what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is show you all the traits that you've been demonstrating, what executives think of them, and then what trait you should be giving instead. And we'll start with the most counterintuitive one of all, specialist. So if you've ever thought, if I need something doing, I better do it myself, or I need to do it because it's just faster that way. Now, if you've been doing that for a while, you've basically been signaling to leadership that you're not promotable because what you've actually made yourself is the specialist who does everything. And it's not that being good at your job is bad, obviously, but when every time something needs doing, you step in and go, let me sort that out, what you're actually showing is that you're really narrow kind of expertise, and that makes you a reliable operator in the role you're in, which is the exact opposite of what gets people promoted. Because leaders aren't sitting there going, who's the most deeply entrenched expert in their niche? They're asking who understands the function of the work and how it ties to everything else that we're trying to do in the business. So this is where the shift comes in. Instead of showing them that you're a specialist who can fix every problem, you have to start showing them that you're strategic. This means you're the person who can connect your expertise to the bigger, wider goals of the business. And when you do that, suddenly leadership stops seeing you as the task doer and instead sees you as someone who can add value on a larger scale, which is potential, and potential is what gets you promoted. promoted. Now, the next one. This is the one I personally reject the most people for. And the funny thing is, almost everyone thinks it's one of their greatest strengths, when it's actually the very thing holding them back. And so the second thing people like to demonstrate is that they are detail-oriented, because most people think that that means, I make sure everything's perfect. Everything's correct with me. You can trust me with the important stuff. But let's take a look at what management actually think about that. What they see is a micromanagement risk. And what this really means is leadership don't see the precision or quality control. They'll see someone who slows everything down because they're buried in the minutiae that doesn't actually matter. And here's why that matters if you want the next level. Leaders never have perfect information, like ever. They're making judgment calls with half the context and 10% of the information they need, and a deadline that expired last Tuesday. So when you're obsessing over the tiny details, what you're signaling without meaning to is that you can't operate in the grey area. And the higher up you go, the more grey things get. So what do you actually need to show them instead? Well, what you need to do is show them that you're a bigger picture thinker, that you're not going to drown the moment the scope gets bigger, that you can step back and look at the whole thing and say, right, this is the most important 20% that's going to get us 80% of the results. Let's go. That's the thing they're looking for. Not polished perfection, just someone who knows what actually matters. And this brings us to the next skill, one that people really struggle with because it requires bending the rules a little bit. And that thing is process driven. So here's where that performance mindset traps people once again. It pushes you into becoming really process driven. And look, following a process isn't bad. It keeps things consistent. It keeps the lights on. But what it doesn't do is signal potential, because when you demonstrate process driven, what comes out, and as an executive point of view, is rigid, as in the person only works when the steps are clearly laid out for them. And here's something that people don't often tell you. It's that process only exists for the bottom half of the org chart. Executives don't have a process they follow. There's no 27-step SOP for running a division or navigating a crisis. They're just thrown into the fog of incomplete information and expected to move anyway. So when leaders see someone who clings too tightly to the rules, they're not thinking, great, someone who's going to consistently execute. What they're thinking is, if I put this person in an environment with no instructions, they're just going to freeze, which is the opposite of promotable. And so what you actually need to signal is judgment, that you can operate in the land of no rules. You can keep the main goal in sight and bend the process to the correct context and still get the outcome that the business is looking for. Executives want people who move when the page is blank, not people who need the next step written down for them. All right, and so this fourth one is really simple, but honestly, almost everyone overlooks it. And I'm going to give you the advice that I wish someone had told me years ago. So when I first moved up to this level, I remember sitting in my office and thinking to myself, what am I actually supposed to be doing now? Because nobody was giving me tasks anymore. There was no checklist. There was no Jira board. There was nothing. And that's when it hit me. At a certain point in your career, you're no longer given tasks. Instead, you're given outcomes. My whole role shifted overnight from make analytics dashboards to do whatever you think will make the company better using your skill set, which is a pretty big leap if you've spent your whole career up to this point being told what you need to deliver. And this is where people fall into the trap. They show reliability and dependability. They say, give it to me, I'll make sure that it gets done, because they want leaders to think that they're ready to step up. But what this actually demonstrates to leadership is that they're a follower, because leadership don't want someone they have to spoon feed instructions to. They want someone who can make the jump I had to make from task doer to outcome owner, which means someone who sees the bigger picture and says, right, this is what we need to achieve. I'll figure out how to get us there. So instead of showing dependability and reliability, what you actually need to show is you're proactive, that you can anticipate needs and spot problems early, propose improvements and take action without waiting for permission. And that's what potential looks like from their side of the table. And look, the thing I struggled with most before I hit this level, and this will probably hit home for you as well, is that every time I did propose a better way of doing something, it tended to just get rejected, like every single time. And one of my viewers had the exact same problem. Her boss literally told her to be proactive and then dismissed every single idea she ever brought. So to see how I helped her fix it and get promoted, then go watch this video next.